Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 141 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making me one of them. And I've got a great episode, so I'm glad you've chosen to drop in today. If you're a first-time listener, then super welcome. Of course, if you're a return welcome, if you're a return listener, then super welcome back to you. I'm really happy to have you here. I am, of course, the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job via this podcast, social media, and just about everywhere else that I hang out to make your business life simpler, because I know that business can be hard and tricky and lonely, but you know what? It should at least be simple or a little bit simpler, which is my promise to you on the so-named Small Business Made Simple podcast. This episode is brought to you by my 5-step marketing plan, which basically deals with the who, what, where, how and why of running a small business and growing it using strategic marketing. If you want to know more, then get in touch and book a discovery call with me, or follow me on social media, where you'll find out lots about my 5-step marketing plan for sure. And of course, at the moment, I have my 6-week marketing mastermind, which is open again, only for the second time this year. So if you're keen to be involved, there's only 8 spots available. You can just go to my website at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au, click the Work With Me tab, and then go to the 6-week marketing mastermind there. Or of course, the link's in the show notes at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/141. Okay, so today's episode, it's actually a little bit different today. I'm feeling really excited to bring you this, but also a little bit nervous because it's a little bit left of field, I guess, you could say. So it's still business related, but it's definitely a little bit different. My guest today is Stacey Cranage, and you may remember her from episode 86, where we spoke all about Instagram, which is her jam. If you haven't listened to episode 86, then head back there and listen to Stace talk about Instagram. She's a gun. But of course, now she's back on my podcast, and I think she's my second ever return guest, so I'm pretty excited to have her back. But she's not talking about Instagram this time. Stacey is talking about soul modes. And maybe if you've never heard of soul modes, that's totally okay. I hadn't either, except Stacey talks about it all the time on her social media. So she got me so curious that I wanted to have her on the podcast to talk about it a little bit more. And even if you haven't heard of soul modes before, if you're in business, and especially if you're a woman in business, you are probably never going to think about work and your work-life balance ever, you're probably not going to think about it the same way again after listening to this episode. It's really, like I said, it's a little bit left of field, but it's really intriguing to listen to Stacey as she talks about soul modes and doing business, looking at soul modes as we go through our life and looking at it from a business perspective. I really enjoyed the chat with Stacey, and I could really see myself in some of the stories that she talked about. Now, if you're a man listening to my podcast, stick with me. This could very much resonate with you still. I'm not a man, so I'm not sure whether it will, but I'm sure that you do have ebbs and flows in the way you design your work or the way you work as well. So soul modes could really relate to you as well. So stick around. But we do talk a lot about women in business, if I'm honest. So I'll let Stacey tell you all about soul modes. She's the person. I don't know a lot. This is a real learning experience for me. But I really enjoyed making it with Stacey. She's amazing on so many different levels and such a top girl as well. Love her to death. So go and grab a cuppa and listen in to Stacey as we talk about soul modes. Stace, I am really excited to have you on the podcast today. You were on episode 86, but you are like my second ever return guest. So I'm super excited to have you on here.
I am so thrilled to be the first returnee of your guests on the podcast.
Oh dear. So last time we talked about Instagram because that's kind of part of your jam. But today we're going to take a little bit of a different turn because you've been talking about something that has really tweaked my interest. Now it's called Soul Modes. I don't know much about it, but I know you're passionate about it and you've created curiosity enough in me to want to share it with my audience. So can you tell us a little bit about what Soul Modes is?
Yeah, for sure. It is different for me. I actually only came across it last year myself, but it was one of those things that was just like, this just makes perfect sense to me. Like it just made so much sense to me to the point that within like I don't know, a couple of weeks of reading the book, I'd signed up for the Soul Modes mentor certification training. Like I just fell in love with it that much. It was just like meant to be, you know. But Soul Modes it's four energetic states that feminine core beings or women, someone who identifies as a woman, go through. So I think like if you look at a bigger picture, like women are at our core cyclical beings. Like our life has 4 phases. We have the maiden phase, mother phase, mega phase, and crone phase. We experience the seasons in terms of like the physical seasons each year. We have our feminine cycle, which if anyone has ever, I don't know if anyone's spoken about it on the podcast or, you've heard anyone talk about like the stages of your feminine cycle, they often refer to those as seasons. And the 4 stages of like your menstrual cycle, but soul modes are like almost like a micro energetic series of states that we run through faster. So you could go through each mode in a day, you could go through like all 4 in one day, and they're really based on the energy of what you need at that particular moment. And definitely like where you are in your menstrual cycle or certain things can definitely impact how strongly you might feel some of them. But what I loved about them was that even though I'd kind of followed my own cycle most of my life and I'd looked into astrology and the moon cycle and all these things, that I still felt like even though I'm a Libran and I'm a this and I'm that, I'm meant to feel a certain way at a certain time of the month, I just felt like that didn't always ring true to me. That sometimes I'd feel really energetic at a stage of the month where I wasn't meant to be, and sometimes I'd feel really not energetic at a stage of the month where I was meant to be more so. And Soul Modes was more like, oh, this is like what I want at a soul level. It just made perfect sense to me that it wasn't based on a rigid like day cycle of days or anything like that. So the 4 modes are wild mode, bear mode, super mode, and sparkle mode, and they're kind of like characterized by the things that you feel or the things that you need at that time. Yeah. So like wild mode is like your wild woman, bear mode is like a hibernating bear, super mode is like your superwoman, and sparkle mode is like a sparkly fairy. So that's
okay.
Small essence what they are.
Yeah. I guess what has attracted me to chat to you today about that is the words, and we spoke about this just before we press record, of course, people feeling overwhelmed at the moment and people feeling burnt out at the moment. And some of the things I've heard you say, when you've been talking about soul modes, on your own socials and through your own podcast has really just kind of made me stop and think that maybe I'm not burnt out. Maybe I'm, just not quite me today or something like that. So I guess that was in essence why I sort of wanted to get on to have you chat. And, I know we're talking mainly about people who identify as, female, but I'm sure that there are times when the opposite sex wakes up and they just really don't feel like working today or something. So I know that if there's any male listeners, please don't turn off, please stick with us. You might find some nuggets of gold in our conversation today. So
men definitely do experience the modes, they just experience them a little bit differently. than what women do, but they definitely do. Like, I can tell when my husband's having a bear mode moment. And I'm like, okay, you just go and hibernate over there. I'll stay over here.
Oh dear, absolutely. Absolutely. We can all identify with that for sure. So, can you give us, like, I know you've given us a really brief explanation of what the four are, but can you kind of give it to us maybe? I don't know whether you can put it into a business setting for us or just a daily setting or something. Kind of tell us a little bit more about those particular modes and how we know and what to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go through each of them um, at a time, just to kind of give a bit of context around what each mode is. But before I do that, I think, like, a little bit of, I guess, stepping back and more, a little bit of more overall context is, there's one thing, Carly Marie, who's the lady who wrote the book and kind of uncovered the soul modes. She has this statement, she says, which is like, we're not one ordinary woman, we're four extraordinary ones. And that kind of just, I don't know, even just that statement rang so true to me when I first read it, because I was like, yes, like, I do sometimes feel like I have multiple personalities, but I don't think I'm crazy.
And I'm laughing in agreement, not laughing at you. I'm laughing, nodding my head. And I know that's hard to tell on a podcast, but yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. And I think, I think everyone can identify with the fact that, there's some days where you wake up and you just like, I don't want to have to deal with the world. I just want to sit here with my cup of tea and my laptop and not talk to anybody. And then all of a sudden you switch up into this like highly focused, I'm going to get everything done and tick off my entire to-do list. And it becomes super important that you do those things. And then, in the next minute, you could be feeling totally different again. And because in society, we live in a very, modern patriarchal society where women are kind of expected just to fit a mold. And, if we have too many big ideas, we're kind of called crazy or a bit flighty, or, if we want to retreat and be internal and, put a blanket over us for a couple of days, we get called depressed. And, it's like the world wants to categorize us as women, but intrinsically we kind of know that there are different elements of us in a way. And that sometimes when, we get told all the time, you have to mother like you don't have a job, but do your job like you don't have children.
Yeah.
Like all that sort of thing. And I think that the constant pressure to live up to this kind of, perfect woman that society puts on us, that's what's leading to mum guilt, and that's what's leading to people feeling burnt out, and and people feeling like that they just want to live more. And this is something women say a lot. I just want to live more in flow with my own life, like my own self, and kind of honor how I'm feeling, and do that a little bit more self-care. But they don't really know how to identify sometimes what that is.
I guess that's a little
in
bit
that
like the
moment.
conversation we had just before, where I was saying, we were talking about, how busy or not busy we were. And I was saying, I am almost at capacity with one-to-one clients at this point, but that's my capacity. Like,
Yes.
that's not, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, working and slogging it out. That's not the business model I want. That's not how I want to work. So I'm kind of building that business model, I guess, around, what I want, sort of thing. So it's a little bit like that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think women particularly find it hard to have that permission slip to do it that way. We kind of feel sometimes that we have to live up to this version of what a modern day businesswoman is, who also is a great housewife and cooks 5 to 7 amazing meals every week and raises their children who perform exceptionally well at school and at sport, and and wear all of those hats. Like, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. And so what I love about soul modes is that it gives you the permission to just honor what you need in that moment, and realize that all of those little different parts of you, there's nothing wrong with them. They all actually have their own little bit of genius. And if you can tap into that genius, then you can kind of use it to hack your life in a way, by using the energetic state that you're in to your advantage rather than fighting against it, which is what we do a lot. It's like just I'm just going to keep going. Just going to keep going because I've got to pull up my big girl panties and keep going today.
Yep. Say that often.
Yeah.
All right.
So the 4 modes. So I'll start with wild mode. So wild mode is like your visionary genius. So wild mode kind of, it's where you might feel a bit contained by structure, or it's your big picture thinking. So wild mode is where you might kind of, and I guess if I'll just relate it to business, because this is, you know, the context of this podcast. It's where you might be sitting there and then go, oh, I'm going to totally retire that course right now. I'm going to build this whole new one and I'm launching it next week. Right? Well, we've all been there.
Yeah, hands up, except if you're driving a car. Hands up if you agree with that.
We've all been there. Or you go, I'm redoing my website. That's it. I'm totally redoing my website. It needs this. I'm rebranding my business. Like you just want to just pull down all the walls that you've got around you and rebuild new ones. Like your wild woman kind of loves change. And you might sometimes think your wild woman's a little bit crazy, but essentially she's a visionary genius. So she's showing you what's possible, right? She's there to kind of show you what's possible. It's where you sometimes might feel like you don't have the inhibitions you sometimes do at other times, where you actually an idea might come to you of this big thing that you want to do in your business. And in that moment, if you're in wild mode, you'll actually see it as something that could happen.
Yeah.
Whereas at other times, you know, self-doubt creeps in and you don't feel that way. When you're in wild mode, you don't have those inhibitions because your wild mode's free. She's wild. She's out there. She's got big picture thinking. She's not thinking about all the little steps that need to happen to make it happen. She's just like, this is a really cool thing you need to do. And that's definitely how it shows up for me. I know a lot of other business people say that it shows up for them in that way. She could be, for some people, just your ideas person.
Yeah.
You know, like when all your good content ideas might come through, or, you know, 10 ideas to write a blog might come through in wild mode, or, you know, it might be when you decide you don't want to be in front of a laptop and you need to get outside or be in nature. Yeah. But, you know, the idea is that she's big picture thinking, but you can't live in that space forever.
Yeah.
Because if we lived in that space forever, we'd never get anything done.
No. Or we'd get it done and never get round to implementing it because
there'd be no implementation. There'd be no implementation. It would
Yeah.
just be like a constant ideas machine.
Yeah. So a little bit bright, shiny object chasing sort of thing.
I think definitely your wild woman can chase bright, shiny objects for sure. So if you feel like you're suffering from shiny object syndrome, it's possible that your wild woman's just trying to say, and she's probably just trying to show you something that could be possible for you. But
and I'm all for chasing bright, shiny objects as long as you keep chasing them. You know, you just don't keep chasing them and then, you know, putting them aside. But, you know, great idea can be a sensational idea.
Yeah, for sure. But like I said, we can't live in that state all the time because then there's no implementation and nothing gets done. So even though she's a really cool part of you, it's not where you want to live all the time. And you do have to try and, you know, I wouldn't say contain your wild woman, but you do need to know how to fill her cup, I guess is probably the better thing to say. The next one is bear mode, and bear mode is like your hibernating bear, which is the perfect analogy for. You're right.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. No, I'll take a sip of water while you're having a coffee.
Yeah, just dying over here. It's fine.
I've been cooked too, so I've constantly got a tickle in my throat. So bear mode is like your hibernating bear, which is a perfect analogy for it. And your bear mode normally wants a little bit more stillness, maybe physically. For some people, definitely bear mode shows up in like physical stillness. For me, it's more mental stillness. Like it's where I want to not be on technology. I'm probably a little bit more quiet, a bit more reflective, a little bit more introspective. If you've got a moment where like self-doubt or limiting beliefs are going to creep in, it's usually in bear mode.
Yeah,
and And that's where you'll find oftentimes, as soon as you have that amazing big idea, within like 2 hours, you're going, who are you to do that? Well, you can't do that. That's too much. You're not big enough for that. Oh my goodness, what were you thinking? There's no way you can make this happen. And this is where you start to feel like you're a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
But limiting beliefs don't always show up in bear mode, but they definitely, if you've got them, they will. I think a lot of women identify with bear mode particularly really easily when they first get to know soul modes, because it's the one that's kind of sometimes the scariest for them, because they feel like if they want to have a nap in the middle of the day, or they need stillness, or they need quietness, or they just want to tell their kids to just be quiet for 5 minutes, that they're a bad person, or a bad mum. But you're not being a bad mum. That's just what you need in that moment to be able to move through your bear. And if you do have limiting beliefs come up, it's usually when you're able to actually access the ability to kind of unpack them and work through them, because it's because you're being more still and introspective. So if you've got those limiting beliefs that are coming up around something, bear mode's when you're able to kind of go, okay, so bear mode kind of helps you question everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when you question everything, you could either take that negatively, right? Or you could question everything and actually use it to your advantage and go, okay, let's pull this thing apart.
Mm-hmm.
Let's logistically pull this apart and see is this something I can actually do?
Is bear mode where you might, in a business context, go start looking at your analytics and insights and things like that, or not so much? Like when you're wanting that, you're questioning everything and you want the data to back it up?
No, you definitely do that in super mode, which comes next. Bear mode would be more where you start, like you're starting to acknowledge, if your limiting beliefs are coming up in bear mode, it's where you really need to acknowledge them and allow those questions to come up and those feelings to come up, and for you to go, what do those feelings mean? Where do those limiting beliefs come from? What are the origin stories of those limiting beliefs? So you can actually kind of release them.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a good mode for doing that if you need to. You don't always have to go that deep. Sometimes bear mode just needs a little bit of stillness. For me, it's mental stillness. It's a great time for me to do really mundane tasks that don't take a lot of mental energy. So, if I've organized my content, just scheduling it in, or things that require just ticking and flicking things, stuff that's not high energy, high mental state.
Or getting my cup of green tea and going and watching an episode of Grey's Anatomy on the couch in the middle of the day because I've had enough.
Or not working at all. Absolutely. And so the thing is that each mode has its own cup. So if you fill that cup, then you can move on to the next one. And that's why when you hear people say, if you need to take that time out, take the time out, because then you've got more energy later. And it's because you're probably in bear mode and you just need to move through that mode so that you can have that get that energy back.
So battling the resistance of not going to have that afternoon nap, or that that walk in the middle of the day, is probably not serving you well, because if you just went and did it, you'd get through whatever is bugging you quicker.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Right.
And I think the thing is, you've got to be practical with it, right? Like if you've got client calls all day, you can't just go, I'm going for a walk now. Bye. See you later. That might not be practical, but it might be, okay, I'm going to have this really like nourishing, comforting lunch or something that's going to still feed my bear, or in that 5-15 minutes between when you have the next client, you don't try and squeeze in extra work. You get up, walk around the house, make a cup of tea, have 5 minutes peace to yourself, and then move on to the next client call instead of trying to push through. So you can't always go and have a sleep, but as nice as that would be. But I think it's also a nice way. Not everyone has back-to-back, like face-to-face client work. If you're a freelancer that does design work or something like that, you can design your own day.
Yeah.
Like we do have the beauty of being able to do that.
Yeah, and I thought it was just funny just then, like obviously two working from home mums chatting to each other on a podcast here. You said get up and walk around the home. Like, like get up and walk around the office just isn't a thing. Like, so many people are working from home now. It's just like get up and have a walk around your house. It's
Yeah.
just a difference in language, I guess. 2021 language maybe.
Totally. I think like sometimes it sounds silly, but I hate housework, right? But the monotony of folding washing in bear mode is something I would do in between client calls where I don't have to have access to technology. I wouldn't have a podcast on in that time. It would just be totally mindlessness
Mm-hmm.
for me. And then it's like, oh, I'm not really a meditator. Some other people might meditate at that time, journal, those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next? Where do we go?
So
We
after
filled that cup. What's next?
we have, yep. And again, we can't live in bear mode forever, ever. Otherwise, nothing would ever get done. So the next mode is super mode. And super mode is your superwoman. She's like your logistical genius. So she's the one that loves structure. She loves tasks. She's very task orientated. Super mode is where you would pull out all of your analytics and data from the thing that you were questioning previously in bear mode and actually start to analyze it because you've got the capacity to do it in that mode. And this is where you'll find people who say, I don't like tech. I'm not good with tech. I can't do this. I don't understand my website. All of a sudden can create a web page or a landing page in an afternoon.
Okay.
But the rest of the time they say they don't know how to. But for some reason, we can unlock that genius in super mode. So like I am not someone that is very driven by tasks. Like give me a list. It's the most boring thing imaginable to me to be given a list of things to do. But in super mode, I have my Trello board out and I have my list of things I need to do and I tick each one of them off and it makes me feel very fulfilled.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I think the thing is super mode's a really good time to tackle those things that are just like really hard at other times, where it's like, it's something that you could figure out, but you just can't be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when I was learning how to edit podcast audio, I found that, learning a new thing, it's quite challenging, but in super mode, you can kind of sit down and go, oh yeah, I can nut this out.
Yeah.
I can do this. Or it's the time when you might go, okay, I've got a new project. I'm going to map out the list of things that I need to do for that project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. I think I've been in that maybe this morning. I'm supposed to be going away on some holidays. So I've written like 6 weeks of emails.
Yeah. That is definitely a super mode thing. Tackling your like doing your books or organizing your email inbox, like all of those mundane things that are just like so frustrating to do any other time, great to do in super mode.
Awesome.
I think for me, when I came across soul modes, I felt like I'd been living in super mode for a long time. Like I felt like it was my dominant mode. I think a lot of that came from being in corporate for a very long time. And a very masculine corporate industry in finance. It was, the superwoman was admired. She was put on a pedestal. Like if you could keep up and work just as hard as the men, then, you were awesome sort of thing. Yeah. So, and I know a lot of women can identify super mode really easily because again, we live such busy lives and busy is like a badge of honor for so many people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's a badge of honor we all need to take off, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're living or forcing yourself to be in super mode, that's definitely what contributes to that feeling of burnout. If you're trying to force that mode all the time when you're not in that mode.
Yeah.
Rather than using it when you are.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll get to, after you explain the next one, I would like to chat a little bit about that, how you can feel them coming on or how you notice these particular things as we go on. But yeah. I'll ask you those questions in a minute. All right. So we've filled her cup. Who's next?
Yep. So sparkle mode is next. And sparkle mode is like Carly kind of calls it like a sparkly fairy. that would kind of be like the little emoji you would use for sparkle mode, but sparkle mode's like your vibrational genius. So she is really driven by I kind of like sparkle mode. Almost it can sound like it's a bit of a flighty mode, but it's actually more grounding because it brings you back to the things that really matter. So in sparkle mode, it's for me, it shows up in I want to really spend time with my family. Like I just love my kids and I have so much gratitude for my life. And I love my friends so much and just want to talk to them and spend time with them. And I love that sparkle mode just brings you back to those core things that are really important in life. You know, because when you're in wild mode, you're thinking big picture. When you're in bear mode, you're so introspective. And when you're in super mode, you're getting everything done. But in sparkle mode, you can come back to more relationships and think more vibrationally. So in business, sparkle mode for me is great to do. Client calls are great to do in sparkle mode. Live streams are great to do in sparkle mode. Podcasts are great to record in sparkle mode because you've just vibrationally just got that like sparkly energy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But at the same time, sparkle mode can be where you go, I'm not doing any work today, I'm going out for lunch.
Now that sounds more like my sparkle mode.
I'm going to put on a nice dress, I'm going to go out for lunch and have wine, and I'm not doing any work because you're so vibrationally attracted to you know, the person that you're going out for lunch with and like calling in those vibes. But
yeah,
from a genius frequency, you know, when business people talk about, you know, calling in the clients that you want to work with and really like you know, like affirming and putting that energy out there to the world of the person you want to be, that next level version of yourself. Sparkle mode's a great time to do that because you can really get those clear visions because you're so connected to yourself and you're so connected to your relationships and you're so connected to that earthy stuff that it's a bit easier to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you started off by saying we can go through all 4 modes in a day, and now you've gone through them. I can definitely see that in my life, and I'm sure some of my listeners are thinking the same. Like it really is something that you can have all 4 seasons.
Yeah, you can. Sometimes you might spend a whole day in one mode. I know when I first came across them, you can feel a bit slower. Like I felt like I was spending a couple of days in each one. And now that I understand them more, I do run through them a lot faster than I used to. In terms of identifying when you're in each mode, it's really the key thing is tracking them, is to be like, okay, so I think I'm in wild mode. What does that feel like for me? What does my wild woman want? And identifying what it looks for you, because it's going to look different for everyone. We're all different people. We've all got different value sets and different personalities, and really they're an energy state, you know, so everyone's energy is different. So this is where, like, for me, so many people say bear mode is like, I just want to go and have a nap. Whereas for me, bear mode is not napping. I'm a very energetic person. I don't do day naps. Like, it's just not something I do. And I'm not someone who loves to sit still. I don't love meditating or any of that stuff. So in bear mode, I'm more likely to go for a walk or go for a swim. It's not necessarily full on stillness for me, but it's mental stillness.
Yeah, you said that a couple of times.
Yeah. So it shows up differently for me. And whereas some people will be like, oh my God, I could not think of anything worse than going for a walk or going for swim laps at the pool or something like that in bear mode. But for me, that's mental stillness for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do show up differently for everyone. And it's about kind of just really tracking them and knowing and understanding what does that cup, what does that energetic state that you're in, what is the cup that needs to be filled in that state, and how do you fill it? You know, someone might love to bake in bear mode. That might be something that's really cathartic for them. So, you know, people that love to cook, that might be something they love to do. Or they might have a hobby or a craft, or they might like to read. You know, in super mode, you might find like even things like the sort of ways you would exercise might change. Like in super mode, you might love lots of weights or to do things really quickly. In sparkle mode, you might want to go for a walk with a friend because then you can talk to them. In wild mode. It might be, I want to go and try that new dance class. That is something you would never, ever, ever consider doing, any other time. And yeah, really just kind of, it's definitely a journey of self-awareness,
Yeah.
a huge journey of self-awareness of what does that part of you need, and how do you fill that cup?
Yeah, right. I love that, the journey of self-awareness. And I think with so many people in my world, and as you were talking about in your world, using words like burnt out and overwhelmed and things like that, is something like creating or being aware of that, self-drive, or having that self-awareness. Is that something that could possibly help them?
Oh, 100%, because we're told, like, for most, like, you start a business, right? And then all of a sudden you're just bombarded with 500 million Facebook ads about how to do email marketing, or freaking which Trello system you need to buy, or these 365-day content plan, tiny offers. And like, you're just bombarded with so much stuff when you start a business, right? And everyone's an expert on everything. And that's great. We've all got niches. There's so many experts out there. There's so much about that's beautiful about business, because we do have so many experts at our fingertips.
Yes.
Like, there's so much beauty in that, but it can be really chaotic and noisy too at the same time, that a lot of people adopt very cookie cutter strategies in their business, because they're trying to follow they're so concerned with following the right way to do things, that they're following a lot of cookie cutter strategies, instead of actually sitting with themselves and going, what is right for me?
Mm-hmm.
And they end up doing all these stuff and taking all this action that causes them to feel overwhelmed and causes them to feel burnt out, because they're just ambitious and they're trying to build a really good business. And you can see that it's meant so well by people, but because there's so much noise, they're trying to do everything all at once. And in doing that, they're not thinking about what's logistically going to work for them and their family, work for them in their business, work for them in their own selves and their own value set. I mean, if you look at social media, there's so many different ways you can use social media.
Yeah.
There's not one way to do it.
Yeah.
But, I see people burning themselves out on social media by trying to do things that someone else told them was the right way to do it,
Mm-hmm.
instead of going, okay, well, how do you want to use it? And then you sit down and you help them build a strategy around what they feel is right for them, that works for them energetically. And then all of a sudden they start shining.
Yeah, lovely. That sounds so lovely. Yeah, awesome. Stacey, this has been such an interesting conversation. Is there anything before we finish up that you wanted to add to the whole soul modes and that sort of thing for the audience?
I think just be open, be open to it. It's definitely a framework of like human behavior and emotional intelligence. If you're into moon cycles or menstrual cycles or whatever it is that you love, like, I'm not saying to anyone drop those systems that work for you by any means at all. What I'm saying is that it is a journey of self-discovery. And I think for a lot of people, particularly women that have children, and I know for me as a woman in my 40s, you've spent a lot of your life looking after other people,
Mm-hmm.
that you have forgotten what it's like to truly understand yourself.
Yeah, and I suppose, like Katrina McCarter, who was on the podcast a little while ago, was talking about, it's almost for some people, of our age, we're about to start looking after someone else again. Like, it's, the parents,
Yes.
the parents are getting older. So we've just about finished looking after our children, although I'm not quite sure you'll ever stop looking out for them. Maybe you stop looking after them. And now we're starting to, deal with the elderly parents, which is a blessing, I know, to have that ability to look after your elderly parents. But yeah, you're almost going into another cycle of caring for somebody.
Yeah. So it is definitely a journey of self-discovery. And if if any of what I've said has resonated and you want to chat about it more, just like, honestly, head over to Instagram, fire up the DMs, I'm all here for a Soul Modes chat.
Perfect. So that's a really great segue into, if they want to learn more about soul modes, what's the name of the book that you're recommending?
So Soul Modes by Carly Marie is the book, the Soul
Yep.
Modes book. I've created my own tracker. So I have copies of the book, which you can buy direct from me. And when you do, you get a free copy of the tracker, which has some like prompts of how to help you determine what mode you're in, and some, free space to be able to journal on it and figure out what that mode looks like for you. I also have access to Carly Marie's Soul Modes Magic course, which is a real deep dive into the modes as well. And I'm doing some podcast episodes on it myself. So like, they're definitely all the places, and you can find all of that on my website at www.thesocialhubau.com/soulmodes, or just fire me up on Instagram at Ms. Stacey Marie _ and shoot into the DMs. Always up for a chat.
So what's the name of the podcast as well?
The podcast. So on my podcast, the Social Hub podcast, I did it, I think it was episode 69 was like an overall episode on the modes, and I'm doing one on business in each mode as well.
Ah, beautiful. Excellent. Yeah. I will be chooking over to listen to those for sure. Stace, I really am thankful for you coming on and sharing your knowledge around this. I know it's a little bit left of field, maybe for some of my listeners to sort of, hear a little bit about this, but I think it just really pertains to business and really where we are in 2021. With a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed and a lot of people are feeling exhausted. I know I'm one of them, and I think it's because I need a holiday, which I'm hoping I can get very, very soon. But yeah, it's just a different way of looking at life and looking at filling your cups and understanding, I guess, your own self. So it's been a great discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge around this. And of course, I will have all those links in the show notes.
Thanks for having me. Always up for a chat, Jen. You know that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Stace.
Thanks, love.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Stacey today and you got something out of listening, and perhaps understand maybe your work habits or your daily life habits a little bit more, putting the soul modes lens over the top of what we do every day. Of course, all the links are in the show notes at socialmediamarketing.com.au/141. And I really hope that, you do enjoy your new journey of self-awareness now that you've listened to Stacey talk all about that. The lady who Stacey mentioned, who she follows, who has created Soul Modes or has written the book about Soul Modes, her name is Carly Marie, and you can find her at carlymarie.com, or of course come to the show notes and get the link there. But I'd really love to know which one resonated with you the most. Can you see yourself in any of the modes that she talked about? Like I said, I certainly saw myself in a lot of the stories, but I'd love you to come into my Facebook group called Like-Minded Business Owners, and let's have a chat there. It's a great little group full of amazing like-minded small business owners, of course, but great places to hold conversations like this as well. Of course, if you have been following along, you will notice that I'm doing some short, really quick podcasts, which are landing on Monday. So I hope that you are enjoying them. There's a series of them. I'm not sure how long I'll do them for, but at the moment, I'm enjoying just producing those short, sharp ones as well. But that's it for episode 141. If you're enjoying the podcast, then I would really love you to share this one with another superstar business owner who's doing that daily grind, who would really appreciate someone else making their business life simpler. And if you have time and you would like to do me a favor, I would love a rating and a review, because this is free content and it does take a little bit to do. I love it. I absolutely love podcasting, but it still warms my heart when someone takes the time to leave me a rating or a review. But I'll see you next week on the podcast for episode 142. In the meantime, let's get on social and hang out over there. You'll find me at Instagram at Jen Donovan _, Facebook in the Like-Minded Business Owners group, and of course you will find me on LinkedIn, where I love to hang out as well. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.